How's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good. Good. Are you in Amsterdam?
I'm in Amsterdam
Cool.
wearing an inappropriately horizontally striped sweater for a podcast video. Realizing that as I just signed in.
I didn't realize there's any rules, but whatever. Totally oblivious to that. Good. Okay. What's happening?
Yeah, sun shining and sun is shining, and so that's really actually what's happening.
Cool.
Makes the day much happier.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's it. It's busy, busy times, but
Okay.
yeah, all good. And with you?
Yeah, I'm in near Salzburg, so
Oh, nice.
practicing my skiing again.
Skiing.
Lots
Yeah.
of practice needed. So it's
More
gonna be
practice.
it'll be like Frank's forever project, like it's one of those like keep doing it because there's loads of people
Ski
volunteers.
retreat
So
communities for the elderly is your next gig.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Paul's here. I'm guessing you're in Portugal.
Yes, yes, I'm
Yeah.
at home in Portugal. Yeah,
I'm
working away.
guessing the sun is shining.
No, actually, now it's a bit rain
Ah, okay. That
as
makes us
it
feel better.
happens. Yeah, but usually it's good fall garb because it's not enough water here. So they say that
Okay.
basically when it rains, it's good because then starting begin of May till like end of September, no rain at all.
All
So
right. So
little rain doesn't hurt.
everyone's happy then. That's good. That's cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you didn't start out in Portugal, right? You started out in Ukraine, is that correct?
Yeah. I'm originally from Ukraine, and then I moved to Ireland in 2001. Yeah, and I lived in Ireland for 18 years,
Yeah.
then moved to America, to Florida, and then came back to Europe. And we're
Mhm.
now in Portugal for almost 3 years,
Uh-huh.
and we'll be moving again soon.
Oh, will you?
Oh,
Where are you
yeah.
going?
Yeah, back to America.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. To
Yes.
Florida?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That
Is
sounds
that
pretty
like an
good.
arbitrage move, when things are on the decline, you like sweep in and like buy some property at a good price, and then when it
Yeah.
goes back up, you're already set?
Yeah, that's what our friends say, but it usually I think it works out vice versa. So we came to Florida in 2019 when it wasn't popular at the time,
Mhm.
and then we left in 2022 when after COVID, over 500,000 people moved to Florida. So we
Mhm.
went another direction. It's funny. And now I just read these reports that people are leaving Florida because the property is too expensive because of the hurricanes. And we actually coming back to Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're flowing against the tide. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it Google that brought you to Dublin or something else?
And no, I came to Ireland almost after university. So I
Mhm.
did computer science in Ukraine. I'm an engineer by trade. And I came to Ireland looking for engineering, for coding jobs. And I couldn't find it for a while. It was 2001, market crash and everything. Economy wasn't doing very well. So I
Yeah.
actually worked as bartender in
Okay.
Ireland for a while.
Yeah.
And then I went and I thought that I needed to study more, and I did masters in international business
Uh-huh.
in Dublin Institute of Technology.
Okay.
And that was really good decision. I'm so happy that I did it because it's really added on top of my kind of technical education. It's added a lot of commercial knowledge and understanding how business works, especially international business. It
Hmm.
was Masters in International Business course. Um, yeah, and I think like second day after my last exam, I got hired into Microsoft
Uh-huh.
in Ireland, in Dublin. And I worked there for a year, and then I got hired into Google.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that was, yeah, I kind of came as engineer, but then I went more into commercial side as I
Yeah.
learned more about business and everything.
Yeah, and I met you, I think you were still in Google, just as you were but you were in a sales role in Google.
Yes,
You
yeah.
were starting Profitero around that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, those early days of Profitero.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then you won the IBM Smart Camp Global Finals, I remember, in San Francisco. And I also remember that you were invited into an accelerator in Dublin, and you went in for a while, and then you said, "No, this is too distracting. We need to have the team away." I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that. It's like, we got to focus on our business, not just talk to other entrepreneurs. So tell us about the start of Profitero and talk us through a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely happy to share. So I was working at Google at the time. So I started at Google in 2008, and it was like, I would say, early start of beginning of 2010. I was always looking for something to do myself, like to be entrepreneur. And I had some small businesses before, but working at Google really showed me what's possible, what business is possible in digital age. And we can speak about it later on as well. I think it's really gave me a lot of inspiration, especially that I was working for Ukrainian markets, and I was the second person for a large country, and at the time, like really growing economically and in e-commerce and everything. I was second person for Ukrainian team. And we grew our revenue basically within 2 years. We grew our revenue tenfold. Can you
Tenfold.
imagine? Like, yes, tenfold from a small base was a few
Right.
million start, but like tenfold, and was very exciting time and everything. And we had this. Our team was called New Markets, and
Yeah.
it was like around 20 of us looking after different like starting countries, new countries for Google. And we had a lot of freedom to do everything what we needed to establish Google in the country, to grow Google business and everything. So really loved it. Yeah, because I could really leverage and do everything what I learned in masters for business, and I could like be essentially entrepreneur in one country. But then at the time, as everything comes to the end, it came to the end too, at the market developed, Ukraine market. And we went through a few restructuring phases where you get like a few layers of middle managers and everything gets formalized, and you get a bit of bureaucracy. So that I was really disappointed by that. Yeah, we were speaking with friends what's possible to do now. And one of the friends, Dmitry Vysotsky, who he worked at the time at IBM, came to me and said, like, look, we have an idea and we have a few guys looking into this, but I think we really would benefit from your business experience from Google and everything and sales. So we just sat down.
Sorry for cutting across. I remember Dimitri coming into my office, and he said, "Oh, we're doing this thing," and I really didn't know what he was talking about. And I said, "Listen, Dimitri, come back in a month's time." And he came back in a month's time, and he'd done twice what he'd said would do. And then I met you, and again, every time I met you guys, it was always like 2 or 3 times what you said you were going to do. And so it was like, okay, there's something happening here. But tell us a little bit about your smaller businesses before we dive into Profitero. You said you had a couple of enterprises before you started in Google.
Yeah. Like, honestly, they weren't nothing special. While in college, I had advertisement business where essentially I was developing advertisements for the magazines, not the magazines, for the stores and cafes, just like external advertisement. It was interesting trend in Ukraine, was very new, and people didn't know how to do this. And because I was on the technical side, I figured out very quickly how to work in the Photoshop, where to get the materials to cut. It was more like just like not really high profile or anything, but still was good for me as a student. And then I had a mobile phone shop. where we would buy phones from China, bring it to Ukraine, import it, and then would sell it or sell it on eBay. So this was interesting because this is where I learned about e-commerce, and that was really taking off, and that the internet world was becoming quite important to people, and there was some GDP already. So that was interesting. But yeah, it learned me that I need to be flexible. I need to learn about new things as soon as possible, and maybe not all of them will work, but something might be working. Yeah.
Then in Google, you saw this massive rise really quickly. You saw what like digital could really do at scale.
Yeah.
And then you saw this kind of structuring and bureaucracy come in. So you saw that kind of whole life cycle of growth through to maturity.
Yeah. And that's something that I didn't want to kind of be part of the really structured system, like we say, to be that nail, or like to be that element that you can only do so much in very limited environment. And this kind of accelerated my search to do something new. And I think when Dmitry came to me, and then he came with his friend Konstantin, who actually came up with that idea. And Konstantin was selling online different stuff. He was like reseller of manufacturers who were selling online, and he had different shops. And essentially that was his own pain that he came to us with. So he was selling parts for laptops, and there are like thousands different parts, and it's very competitive business because it's a commodity. It doesn't matter what manufacturer part is, like everybody's trying to make as cheap laptop as possible. So he was always trying to be competitive in the market, and because he had like thousands and thousands of items on his e-commerce store, he understood that he needed to monitor other sellers for those parts, and he needed to develop some system for this, some platform. So he essentially developed like a first, you can say now it's popular, MVP version of Profitero, where he did it for himself, more in a manual way, but still he saw the immediate benefit for him as a seller online when he knew what competitive prices were in the market, and he can essentially adjust his price almost dynamically to capture the margin and still be that cheapest offer on the market. So I saw the opportunity straight away, but there was still quite a long journey to get it monetized in the more general market. But that was very interesting to me straight away.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I'm even having a hard time keeping up with like the disparate things you've done and where you guys. So you're like a market scanner, kind of following trends, looking at ideas, and then trying, I think, to apply your knowledge base to, you know, assess it and find an opportunity. So I mean, is that kind of correct, would you say, after listening to what you've just went through? Because that is a really broad set of different experiences.
Yeah, in part, I like the innovation, so it's natural for me to look what's new is developing there and everything, and that was always interesting to me. But I think I'm also kind of can do it guy, where I see some problem that needs to be fixed, I just get excited immediately and I go and I try to go and fix it and so on. So that combination probably played out well in that.
Well, and you already hinted at this, but can you talk a little bit about, I mean, why did you take that? Were you just worried that there's might be something you're missing when you took that job at Google, or why? Based on what you've described, that doesn't seem like a natural place to go. What was the real intrigue there?
No, like Google was very interesting opportunity for me. Like being an engineer, just getting like formal business education and without significant business experience, like both Microsoft and Google were, I would say, like continuation or expansion of my college education, kind of going and learning in the field, sales, marketing, operations, everything, and even how big businesses operate. Like it really helped me then in time with Profitero to understand how big enterprises work and like what the chain of command is in at those businesses, and that you need to get some champion in the system who has the right like to sign off your contracts and everything. So it's kind of, I would say, like ongoing education that Microsoft and Google were for me. Yeah.
Right. No, that makes sense. Go ahead,
Talk us through. So talk us through from, I love businesses that start with a founder problem because they understand the problem really well. You can get the initial like solution together, but then as you said, that's a long way from commercialization.
Yeah.
So you came in around that point. Tell us a little bit about the steps involved in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started, like, as you said, we knew that this was solution to the Konstantin's problem, but we didn't know and we were not sure if this would work for like first any other retailer selling online. So on one side, like I would say we had three directions that we are working on. First of all, we were trying to develop a more expanded prototype to collect the data from the e-commerce websites and see how we can grow it and to present something to the potential customers. Because it sounds great, like you can go to the customers and tell them, oh, we can solve your problem. But if you have nothing, nobody is going to believe that you can solve it. So we understood that we needed to have something. And that's what we were working on. Second part, we were trying to find some customers that essentially would prove that there is this problem in the market at the wider scale. And I think it's important because being an entrepreneur, it's very easy to fall in love with some specific problem.
Yeah.
And it's hard to understand being on the inside if that problem is big or small. And I've seen many like niche solutions that then it's very hard to scale. So this is what we wanted to understand first. Do we really have a large market solution, or we have just a solution for the niche problem that might not be big business and is not venture fundable? And then third one, it was essentially to go and try to get venture capital funding. And we went to Sitcom Accelerator in London, and then like just speaking and presenting everywhere. We got some network there and so on. But essentially, like what you asked, trying to understand if it was solution to the broader market, actually it was quite simple. First of all, we went with the friends of friends and trying to ask to find anybody who had at least some remote connection to the retail or e-commerce. And we were like inviting these people for coffees. And speaking to them and trying to like to maybe get some sanity check what they think. Because maybe they didn't have that problem, but if it was somebody who worked at Tesco, maybe not as the e-commerce or pricing manager, but still they know how retail works and they can potentially tell straight away, no, look, this is completely off, or maybe there is something there. So it's like kind of that first sanity check. And then I just went on LinkedIn and I just messaged, I think like over 100 people that had e-commerce in their title. And just trying, just like writing, like, we know you would love to understand, you probably want to know what your competitor pricing is. We would love to help you with this. Can we do a quick call and talk about this? And I remember.
And did that work? Did you get a lot of responses cold?
Yes, we did get some. So I think I had a spreadsheet, and like from 100 DMs, cold DMs, I had probably like 5 or 6 calls. But then again, it was more like sanity check, but getting closer and closer. So I had calls with those people, and some of them told me like, yes, it's a big problem. Some that said, no, maybe it's not that important, but we were getting a bit of feedback. And overall, that feedback was positive again. And then we went even closer. We tried to zoom in on the pricing teams. And this time it happened a bit later. It was already when we were at seed camp. And I think we were like in the process of getting seed funding. But there was one interesting story. We got invited to Tesco in UK by their VP of pricing to their price office. And myself and Dmitry came, and they showed us their pricing system. Like, it's amazing where you can get with a bit of hustling and like push and wanting to learn about people's problems.
Yeah.
So they said like, look, this is how we price our e-commerce assortment. We collect the prices. We have actually competitor prices, and this is the dates when those prices were collected. And I'm looking at the screen, and I see a few prices that were updated like 6 months ago. And I point out to this manager, look, these prices were not updated for 6 months. And he just looked, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. This is actually a big problem because our prices potentially outdated and like outdated big time. And we had very good conversation that's, I think, really helped us to understand their problem, that they couldn't collect these prices at scale every day, and they just were operating on the outdated information, making their pricing decisions on the outdated bad information. But there was an interesting moment when at the end of the conversation, they were quite impressed, but they looked at us and they like, so you work at Google, to me, and you, Dmitry, worked at IBM. So guys, why are you doing this? And we were like, wow, yeah, that's a good question. Maybe we need to quit our jobs and we need to really do the solution and to bring it to the customers. So that was that big moment where we understood that, like, yes, we need to go into this full time. Because in essence, we were trying first by keeping the job on part-time, speaking with people to learn if it is a real problem, if maybe real business can be built of this. And this was the moment when we understood that, like, we don't have 100% proof, but there is enough here that we can go into this full time. Because if the largest retailer in UK, with all the resources and budgets and everything, they can't get the competitor prices updated more frequently than 6 months, then there is some opportunity here.
Yeah.
Yes, so that was like one proof, first big proof.
And how shortly thereafter did you guys actually go full time?
In a few months after. So I left in October, Dmitry left in November. Yeah, I think we received some initial seed funding. I think in total was 100,000 euro from seed camp and some angel investors. And we were putting everything together, organizing company and stuff. And then we're like, yeah, let's go.
It's a fairly small amount. That's a pretty short runway. And I remember slightly after that time, like, you guys were pretty hot in terms of like VCs coming to me saying, you know, can you introduce me to the guys? Or, you know, like, it was certainly, you built a momentum, I think, that, you know, the VCs were chasing you as much as you were chasing them, I think was my memory of it.
Yeah, that happened a little bit later, but yes, then we had, the first was round with Delta Partners, Irish-based, and this actually Irish government startup fund invested into them, Bank of Ireland Startup Fund or something it was called. So we got $1 million I don't remember, $8 million valuation or something.
Okay.
So that was the first investment. We got it, I think, like around 6 months after the initial seed camp investment. But we had already paying customers at the time. So
Yeah.
that probably played into
That
that.
helps. That helps
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah, that
Yeah,
helps.
that's right. And so that's a huge part of the story. But then to take it from that initial customers to the next phase of scaling it up, like talk us through a little bit of the kind of milestones in that journey, Bo.
Yes, sure. So after that kind of initial big investment and having some initial revenue, I think it's still like in every startup's life, you kind of work very hard, and you do not have immediate proof that this is going to work out as a big business. And you get, I think you get to some level of customers and everything, and then you have kind of jump increase in the like the startup visibility on the market and how VCs see you and everything. So it's kind of, you've worked for that for a year maybe, and then it just becomes visible after you pass some milestone. This is definitely something I think very specific to startups. Oh, that's what they say, like overnight success. But the thing is that to become that overnight success, you need to work for at least a year or something. Yeah. And people do not see that part of the iceberg underwater. But then when you become overnight success, everybody sees that part that is over the water and like saying, wow, it's such amazing business and these guys are doing so well. But that's a lot of sleepless nights and everything is behind this.
And you moved to the US as part of that journey, right? Is that correct?
No, I moved already in 2020, so that was kind of at the end of Profitero journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were back and forth. You were traveling a lot, right? And
I was traveling. Yes, I was traveling a lot. I was only commercial person in a company first 2 years. So I remember when we actually raised our round A, was $8 million with Polaris Partners from Boston. We had 34 engineers in the company and me. And I was the only salesperson for a very long time until we hired actually a sales guy, VP of sales, who I worked with at Google. So again, that Google connection played really well. When you work at some companies, it's different when you are friends with them because you see how they work, how they perform. You learn how they perform under stress and everything. And that sort of filtering really helps when you go and you need to hire people for your venture. So I was flying a lot because I was the only salesperson. I was flying a lot to UK. UK was at the time our biggest market. We had the most customers there. Sometimes I was going to London like 3 times per week. I would just wake up, drive to there. Yes, I was calling it a bus, London bus. Because when you go there, when the customer wants you to be there, you can't just manage and say, okay, I will be there on Monday. So can you, VP of sales, meet me not on Wednesday, but on Monday? So I was like going, okay, scheduled one meeting, bought a flight. Here I go, scheduled another meeting. Okay, I'll go another day. Okay, we have another meeting. It's great. Like I was happy to get as many meetings as possible. And we were speaking with like really big enterprises in UK. Like I mentioned Tesco. Actually, one of our largest customers at the time was Ocado. And was amazing working with them. Very advanced technologically retailer, completely like above everybody else that we've seen in the market. They had their robotic arms in the warehouse. They brought us to see this before Amazon. Can you imagine, like at that point, they were more advanced than Amazon on the robotics and everything. Sainsbury's, Waitrose,
Wow.
John Lewis, they were all our customers, or like we had advanced conversations with them. And then we got investment from Polaris, and we understood that we can open up US market as well. And then I started to fly to US.
Yeah.
Not 3 times per week, thanks God, but yeah.
How did you find the US market compared to the UK in terms of the sales culture?
That's a great question. There are definitely big differences between Europe and US. And this is partially reason why we move into US again soon. I think US is, like, despite any politics, situations and everything, US is much closer to the market economy than any country out there.
Yeah.
And it has its positives and negatives, of course. You get more protection, consumer protection in Europe, more employee protection. But I think US, because being closer to open market economy, as a company, you can iterate and grow much faster. You have definitely much better access to the capital, like risk capital, that is not afraid to invest in early stage startups. And it just creates a spillover probably in every other industry as well. Like what we've noticed that US companies, even large enterprises, they can make decisions much faster than their European counterparts. For example, we signed our first customer in US, Sam's Club, which is part of Walmart, the largest retailer in the world. We signed the first contract with them over the phone. Just like we had one call, they asked us, they had the problem with competitive pricing data. We did a free pilot for them. So they told us, provide us data set, and then we will check it. We provided to them, they checked it. It was good quality. And like within a few weeks, we signed the contract. Where in Europe, we could be speaking for a year and a half before we signed contract. So that's really, I think that's the main difference.
Yeah. And so after that experience, then what? Then what was the next move?
Scale up in US markets. So since we got that investment, we started to sell in US. US became our largest or the most important market. And we started to speak with many retailers. I went a few times to Bentonville, to Walmart pricing team and Sam's Club. And we signed our largest customer in US became Amazon. Again, like you would think, native e-commerce retailer with huge unlimited resources, a lot of engineers and everything, and they couldn't solve that problem. And I think it's more about like fragmentation of resources, because their pricing team didn't have resources and access to the engineers, and it was better and faster and probably even cheaper for them to contract the outside supplier for the data that was and still is very important. So I went to Seattle, and we had meetings with Amazon pricing team, and we signed them up as a customer for a smaller contract, then bigger, then even bigger, and Amazon became one of, I think at the time, was our largest customer, and definitely one of the most important customers, if not the most important customer.
And how did you build the team? Because some of the team were in Belarus, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
It was a fairly large organization, right? And how did you build that remotely, and how did you manage the kind of cultural aspects of it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think we've been lucky that we had founders with different expertise. Like we almost didn't have overlaps. Myself, I was, despite being an engineer in the past, I was fully commercial. I knew it was my area. I looked after it. Konstantin and Dmitry, They were technical founders, but they also had like very small overlap in what they were doing. And Dmitry was based in Dublin with me, but Konstantin was based in Minsk in Belarus. And this is how it worked out well, because essentially Konstantin was developing and growing a team there. And having engineering team in Minsk was great, because they're very good engineers. They have very good post-Soviet education, or like Soviet-style education, mathematicians and everything, high class. And also the wages there much lower than in Europe, or especially in US. So we could really hire best of the best and pay them above the market, but it still was very good for us as a company globally. So we were scaling up significantly team there, a bit even in advance, and like trying to develop the product, to scale the solution and everything. And the way we were hiring there, it's actually, I think you find it interesting. We hired people that we knew were like the most experienced engineers, and like top of their classes in universities and stuff, winners of Olympiads, like world-class mathematicians and everything. And then we asked them, who is the best person that you know in this area? Or like list top 5 people that you would like to join your team who are the best. And then they made introductions, and we spoke with them. And like, this is how we got majority of our hires, at least till we like overgrew that capacity, and it took like several years.
Fantastic. So I know we haven't got that much time. We still got a lot to get through. So talk a little bit, we talked about building companies being hard, and then you mentioned that selling them was pretty hard as well. Do you want to talk us through kind of at a high level the exit, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing now, and then your role model company?
Sure. Yeah. So selling the companies is definitely hard, and I'm sure you learned as well. I learned a lot on many different levels. Like, first of all, it's your baby, and you essentially you conceive it as an idea, and then you grow it, and unless you're doing it just for money, you become very attached to it. So that was a lot of kind of emotional things, and like trying to understand where it's a good decision in generally, even to be selling the company. Secondly, it all depends, of course, on the who will buy the company. Like, till this day, I think that the best acquirer for the company is a partner, like larger company that potentially you can partner with, and you provide some solution to their customers, and then they see the value to scale it across the board, and they acquire your company because they want to grow this business. So the business-based acquisition. And then, of course, as you know, like it goes, companies buy product, companies acquire, and so on. But business-based acquisition is the best. And in the way we were going that direction, we had early partnerships with Nielsen, which actually became very successful, despite it's being a huge company and very structured company, public company in the way of management. We partnered with WPP, Kantar, so we had a few other IRI, other partners. But then in the process, what we learned, and essentially, I would say like coming 2018, around that stage, we grew a lot. We were around 10 million ARR. We had we received a lot of institutional investment. And I would say, like, for investors, VCs, they definitely looking how to exit. And they have their different timings and everything. And this is what they do full time. Like, they buy and sell companies. Essentially, investment is buying a small part of the company, and then they sell. So they know they are much more experienced than us founders in this.
Yeah.
And they are also, at least people that we've met, like very good at managing founders and kind of herding them where they want us to go. So like at some point there were conversations, so maybe it's a good time to sell Profitero and so on. And yeah, we started, okay, what do you mean and how this can possibly work? So we had like initial conversations, like not asking to buy, but just exploratory conversations with Nielsen, even IRI. And while we were very valuable for them, for example, Nielsen as a solution that they were reselling to their customers, the multiple that they would pay for our company was significantly smaller, and simply because they were not tech company. So tech companies like Google, Amazon, they would pay 10x of by revenue and everything. And other companies in the market, especially public companies, they pay much lower revenues. So that was kind of the process that started. And then in the way we had official process, the investors, they helped us with investment banker who were kind of said, okay, if we can informally share information about Profitero and see how much interest there and everything. And this is what I consider being like less valuable, less better solution, because this is you go and asking for the acquisition. It's not from the position of strength. Well, it's still not position of weakness, but still. Yeah. So essentially those conversations started. Oh yeah, and I didn't mention our competitor was acquired in the market, so that played nicely. But essentially then we got several offers after some period of time, I think like around 4 or 5 months, that we needed to evaluate. But at the end, we made a decision to go with the offer, which was on paper better. And we went along with the offer and started due diligence. But at the end, that company couldn't deliver on their side. Yeah. They didn't have, they didn't have funds to purchase the company. Oh, wow. So even that things happen, and that was really unexpected. Okay, it was really unexpected to me. And we were like 6 months plus in the due diligence process with them, and they were dragging it for a while and everything. And we already got out of cadence with our funding cycle and stuff. So then our investors help us to found another investor, a hedge fund, that agreed to put some large amount of money into the company and give some secondary exit to the founders, partial exit, by keeping other equity still in the company and so on, or under different forms. So that was the first exit that we had. And at that time, after this closed, essentially myself and Kos, we stepped down, we went part-time, we stayed part-time. Dmitry left full-time. So again, you can see how it happens in the acquisition. Some it was painful, of course. Yeah. But the main thing that we wanted company to prosper, and we were helping where we could and everything. And the company did relatively well. So until the full acquisition in 2022 by Publicis for $210 million. Yeah, so that was the long process. That was the long path.
And for a European company, that's a great outcome in terms of the size of it. Yeah. Sorry, Sarah, do you want to come in there?
No, and then I was going to say, and on the back of that, you said, now what? And I'm hungry again. And I'm going to go at it again. And is this when you moved to Portugal after the exit, perhaps?
Yeah. In 2022, before the exit, we went to Portugal, and I was part-time at Profitero, part-time looking at other opportunities. And this is when we went with Datahive. There was a lot of experimentation as well. And we were selected to the accelerator too, our team. and it's like it's a YC type accelerator, but in Web3 space, so in crypto. And it's again, like as you mentioned, Sarah, I like new industries and new technologies, and I was watching crypto grow through different cycles for a while. And I think despite all the casino and like speculative part of it, there will be something at the end of it. I think probably 95% of projects will fail, but something will come out of it. And at Datahive, essentially what we're doing, we are trying to use that crypto token incentives to self-manage many people at the scale. And we've seen this already works in many different protocols. So this is essentially what we want. On one side, we are taking like crypto technology. On the other side, we are taking and expanding on the data collection technology, and we combining it together to help crowdsource data sets for the AI model training and fine-tuning. And we think it's quite a novel approach. And again, we are speaking to potential customers, and we see a lot of positive feedback so far and everything. And yeah, very excited of doing this again.
And it's a pure Web3 company in that the investors are also getting tokens, is that?
Yes, that's right. Yes. So it's, I think from legal perspective and everything, now it's coming to being a standard. Like for Web2 companies, it's Y Combinator Safe became a standard. So currently we are finalizing on final stages of our seed round, which we'll announce in a few weeks. It's a relatively large seed round, like Martin, you mentioned $100,000 with which we started Profitero. So this seed round is actually in millions of dollars. And the investors, they will get tokens at the time when token will be minted after there's some period of vesting and so on. So it's very interesting. It's very different approach to the standard startup fundraising.
Yeah, and a very sort of specific set of investors that are going to be interested in that, I would imagine.
To be honest, in crypto, in Web3 startups, there is a big pool of investors, and there became like blue chip investors like Pantera Capital and others that I would say potentially now fundraising in Web3 might be even easier than in Web2. Yeah, but it's all depends.
Even with issuing tokens as a standard.
Yes, for them, they see this as an advantage. Because again, if you invest in a normal startup, Web2 startup, you need to wait until it builds a business, until it's acquired. And this outcome, as we know, happens like maybe several % of all of the startups that get initial seed funding. Whereas for Web3 startups with tokens, and like not all Web3 startups even have tokens. There are many stable coins projects that do not have, they're just equity and revenue. But those that have, once the token is minted, and typically it's in 12 months, the lockup period is finished for the investors, and they get their tokens that they can sell on a liquid market. So essentially like 1 year, so maybe as a VC, you invest in a startup, they work on a project for a year, 2 years, plus 1 year, so 1 year vesting. So in total as investor, you can start selling your tokens after 3 years, or at least you get the tokens in 3 years. And where you sell or not, it depends on how bullish, how excited you are about the project. And yeah, so many VCs, they really like this approach. And like A16Z, they have their big crypto fund as well. Yeah, there are many of them.
And you're raising more, is that because it will cost more to build, or you want a longer runway, or what's the strategy behind raising more than first time around?
Yeah, ideally it's to ensure the runway until the TGE, so until we can launch a token. And there is a specific that when you launch a token, you need to put some liquidity as well.
Okay.
So some amount, like I think around $300,000-$500,000 need to be put into the liquidity pool to ensure that there is that liquidity. So in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's more cost, and also there is a lot of legal cost, like to be fully openly transparent, because of the Web3 regulation across the world is very different. The legal spend is quite high, or like much higher comparing to the standard startups. Yeah.
Our guests are very intelligent on this show, including yourself, and so you know, one of the things they do is make sure we've limited time to talk about their role model company. So but we have a few minutes, and also they're also very good at picking great examples, and you've picked Google as your company. Why did you pick Google as a role model of a great company, Bo?
I think this is I've done because of the few different points. So first of all, I have very strong personal connection with Google. As I mentioned, Google has been my continuation of college, where I learned so much from many different perspectives. So this is one reason. But secondly, as a startup, I really like how it worked out for them. It's hard to say, like, if it probably majority what happened with Google at early stage wasn't planned. Like, you have two PhD students who developed a way to index the scientific papers, or like papers, and then they understand that they could use this to index all the web pages on the internet. So it sounds like almost an accident how it happened, and they built this engine still being in the college. What I really like similar to our experience, and it sounds like they didn't plan to found the company from the start. They wanted Yahoo, I think, or like other people to buy it for $1 million. But then at some point they decided to jump in and just do it. But especially what I like about Google, that before any monetization, before starting to charge their customers, they solved the big problem in the market. And I think this is so important for any startup, anybody starting a company. Before you try to draw your revenue projections or anything, ensure that you have the product market fit, ensure that you're solving a problem and that problem is big. And then you will definitely build a business out of it. If you have these two things, you solve a problem and the problem is big, you will find a way to monetize it later, wherever way it will be possible. And this is, I think, it's very interesting that this is how it happened with Google. Essentially, they develop AdWords, like purchase of Overture or something like another company. But like, because they solved such a big growing problem, it's still profitable till now. That solution for the problem is still profitable. So this is my way of like understanding their business. And I think it's also, Google is interesting because they went from a scrappy startup, being in a Menlo Park garage, to like huge now conglomerate and like very rigid and potentially very, well, I know, very bureaucratic company, but all the journey is very interesting, and there are big learnings on every stage of it. And I definitely had my personal learnings with them.
Super. I don't know if I can argue that one, Martin. I think that was a pretty good defense of his choice.
I was going to ask if you think it's still as great as it was in the early days, because obviously the challenge is to keep reinventing yourself, keep keep innovating.
Yeah.
You know, so I know you're not working there anymore, but I'm sure you still have a lot of friends and you had a lot of thoughts about it.
Yeah, I think like yeah, somebody told me before that essentially you can compare big companies to the like startups to the to like sailing boats. They're very fast, very flexible, and the big companies to the large cruise ships. So we as startups, we have the advantage that we are faster and more flexible. We can outmaneuver the big cruise ships, and they're very hard to turn around and everything. But once they get going, they will go for very, very long time because that revenue, that sticky customer base and everything keeps that going. So that's one way. I think Google will be a viable and profitable business for a very long, long time. But I think also like comparing to that that comparison, I think also companies, maybe companies not like large companies, not cruise ships, but set of the boats. And there are some cruise ships, but there are different boats in this set. And it's what I would link it to different teams working at Google. And I'm sure like AdWords team or YouTube team now, it's a huge boats, a huge cruise ships, and they're very rigid, a lot of bureaucracy. They're cash cows. They're making Google a lot of money. But there are definitely, I can see a few sailing boats in the Google flotilla, like AI, Waymo self-driving, probably a number of others that are a bit under radar because they are too small. But this cash cow, the AdWords and everything, they fund them. And yeah, is Google still good? Like as a technology company, I think it is. There are many interesting opportunities they are working on. Time will show, but they definitely still interesting. At least parts of Google are still very interesting to me. Yeah.
I always love chatting with you all. So thanks for taking the time. Sarah, anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, but same here. It was really lovely meeting you and really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks for sharing all your experience with us. And good luck with Datahive.
Great.
I'm with the
Thank
move
you.
to America. See you, Val.
Yeah, thank you. Great to speak and nice to meet you, Sarah.
You
Cheers.
too. Bye.
Yeah, we could have gone for like another half an hour at least there. Like, felt like
Yeah.
abrupt we stop. I gotta stop.
Yeah. I mean, you can see